to the Optimal Bio podcast. At Optimal Bio, we don't just balance your hormones, we balance your whole body. Our conversations range from nutrition to medicine with an emphasis on wellness tips to support your health journey. If you like what you hear, find us on the web at optimalbio.com and follow the podcast so you don't miss an episode.
Hello, everybody, and welcome to another edition of Optimal Bio's Wellness Podcast. Today, we have a special guest, Philip Palmer, Executive Director and founder of WarriorWOD. Philip, you've done some crazy things based on your background, so I thought we'd jump right into one of the things I thought I would love, but didn't really have a good time doing, which is skydiving. And, you know, as we know, everybody has a bucket list, and for the most part, most of us have, either tried to skydive to check that box or anticipating skydiving down the road. My experience is they throw you in this, give you a little, education, and they throw you into a, two-benched plane, and the thing shoots straight up in the air like a rocket. And then you're attached to somebody you barely know, and then they throw you out. And the first, maybe 15 seconds is phenomenal, right? You're just free falling, everything's great. And then they pop that chute, and I was the last person to go out. So we had to wait for everybody else to land. So we're in this like circle mode, and I'm clearly never going to be a Navy or Marine pilot because I have stomach issues once I start spinning around. So I couldn't wait to get to the ground. So why do you love it so much? And maybe you can help someone like me, overcome my physical limitations.
Yeah. So skydiving, I'll be honest with you. I started skydiving when I was still in the Marine Corps. And I think this ties very nicely into what we're doing with WarriorWOD. Because at the time, there was nothing for me to really cope with some of the PTSD issues that I had from my time in combat, right? And so on a whim, just one random Friday night, it was myself and another buddy drinking beer, and he goes, "Hey, did you hear John went skydiving?" I was like, "Oh, no, that's really cool. We should do that." He was like, "All right, let's do it tomorrow." And we went the next day. He swore up and down he was going to do it thousands and thousands of times. And I swore up and down it was a one and done. And so we both went, and I'll tell you, like, leaving the plane, I had a similar experience. That first 15 to 20 seconds, absolutely amazing. And what I realized and what was really satisfying is there was no thoughts of my deployment. There was no stress from my job. There was no stress from relationships or bills or all the things that consume our days, right? I was living in that moment. And that was all I dealt with. And just looking at the view, enjoying the rush associated with it, even under a canopy, like I was not even thinking about all the stressors and all the demons that were in my life. And so all of a sudden it became an addiction or almost like medication that I would go in the weekends and spend all weekend just kind of in peace. And I equated it almost like perfect peace. The only thing you have to do in those few minutes is think about those few minutes. And so that's why I loved it so much. I did about 4,000 skydives, was able to perform at the highest level. I was on the 2018 world record attempts. And all of those accolades and accomplishments really was rooted in the fact that I was using skydiving to find peace. So that's my pitch on it. Hopefully it gets you back.
Well, I mean, I agree with you on the whole peaceful part of it. You're kind of forgetting about everything as you're just looking down and seeing the view. But like I said, once that chute's pulled and then you're slowing down and you're in this case, I wasn't floating, I was spinning, but not in a bad spinning way, just a, circular kind of thing going down. Corkscrew, I guess, is the best way. I was like, man, maybe I'll try it again. And maybe next time I won't be the last guy getting off the plane.
Yeah. Now I did hear that you were in Denver. Is that correct today?
I'm in Breckenridge, Colorado. Yes.
Okay. So I'm assuming that you're going to fly out of Denver at some point. There's a iFly, which is simulated skydiving. So the thing that you said was the most enjoyable, that's all you do in there. So it's a wind tunnel that has wind coming in between 120 and 200 miles an hour, and it will make it feel just like skydiving. I highly recommend it. I've got a lot of friends that still work at that tunnel, and it is, for someone that liked the free falling portion of it, a way to replicate that without the canopy.
I'll check it out. So tell us a little bit about yourself and how you got into, I know you served in the military, in the Marine Corps, and your background's very impressive. So why don't you just kind of walk the audience through your background?
Yeah, so I'll take it back with my thoughts of going in the military. So my grandfather, amazing human, has spent his whole entire adult life dealing with the Marine Corps. Even in his retirement, he continues to give back. He's turning 90, and every day of his life is still dedicated to the Marine Corps. So there was an element of, when I was very, very young, he was brainwashing me. Right. And so there's pictures of me at Paris Island during family day. And I didn't have any family that was going through boot camp at the time, but he would take me down there throughout the summers every Friday. And what he was doing was showing me the culture associated with the Marine Corps. So I was sold. I knew that that's where I was going to go. Fast forward to my freshman year of college, I went to the Citadel, which is a military college here in Charleston, South Carolina. And about September 5th of 2001, I signed the paperwork, thinking that I was going to go into a peacetime military. And then a few days later, we all know what happened with September 11th. And so everything kind of changed at that point. So if we fast forward a little bit farther, I was commissioned into the Marine Corps in 2005, went through my initial training. 2006, I'm in Iraq and in Ramadi. So Ramadi was a very chaotic place at that time. This is where the Sunni Awakening happened. This is where Senator McCain came and to demonstrate how peaceful it is, walk through the streets of Ramadi without a flak jacket. And so it was a time that was very just make or break of the future of Iraq. And so I'm in this very kinetic environment, and we had significant amounts of casualties, right? Both U.S. and then we partnered with our Iraqi. And so because of that, it was something that I carried on moving forward. And so once we came home in October of 2007, I'm dealing with these demons kind of silently. And there was a stigma in the military, and I hope that it's no longer there. I truly hope that leaders that have gone through it have made this change. But when, 2006, 2007, there were still leaders that haven't deployed to Iraq or Afghanistan. And there was a stigma that if you had mental health issues, you were not fit to lead and have command. And anybody in the military, they want greater responsibility. They want to be a platoon sergeant. They want to be a first sergeant. I wanted to be a company commander. I was hoping one day to become a battalion commander. And so you deal with that stigma, and you learn quickly just to bottle it up. Otherwise, you'll never get to go and do your aspirations. So I bottled it up until 2013, and I finally left the military. It became a point of, I loved the men and women that I served with, but I was kind of done with some of the responsibilities of a officer that was going to be sitting behind a desk for a while, right? And so I started to go to the VA. They finally diagnosed me with PTSD and then TBI as well. So a brain injury from IED blast. And their solution was to pump me full of antidepressants. And so did it work? Yeah, it did. Like, it numbed my mind, and I didn't have the thoughts and the memories and the nightmares. But it also numbed every other part of me. And so from a social aspect and from an occupational aspect, I was not performing at my capacity because I was numb. and everything was kind of foggy. On a whim, and I'm tying in kind of where WarriorWOD, the genesis of WarriorWOD is, on a whim, I started to go to a gym that was just down the road from my house. It was a mile, so I could run there, work out, run back. It happened to be CrossFit. At the time, I didn't know what CrossFit was, right? I was just like, okay, cool. It's super convenient. That's what I'm going to do. And over the first year of being involved with CrossFit, and I'm not one of the disciples of CrossFit, but I do believe in the community aspect. What I loved about it is you walk in and everybody is cheering you on. Even the last person to finish is getting the biggest applause, right? There's banners across the wall. You've got the Marine Corps flag, the Army flag, the Navy flag, the U.S. flag. We have these things called hero WODs, and they very much so value the veteran and military community and first responders, right? And so you get this kind of community. And within that first year of having that community, having accomplishments and succeeding in goals, I was completely off my medication, completely. So that was my first thought, like, oh, there's something here. I couldn't quite pin it down. And then story after story after story of other individuals, veterans and then also civilians alike, saying that it was through exercise that they were able to overcome and cope with their demons from PTSD. And so in 2019, we started, 2019, we started talking about WarriorWOD. We didn't know exactly what it was going to look like. And then finally in 2021, we pulled the trigger of it, and we've been operating since. And so our purpose in life is to prioritize exercise and nutrition as prescriptions for PTSD and other invisible wounds for veterans and help them recover. So that's where we are today. That's what my organization WarriorWOD does. And I truly believe we're making an impact at this point.
How many members do you help?
So going directly through our program in the last year, we've had just over 50. We've helped significantly more and had impacts and not the full blown program, but having influences, helping this veteran get a gym membership, helping this veteran work with a nutrition coach. Our program, the 50 that's gone through, what they have enjoyed has been a paid gym membership, paid nutrition coaching, and then they would get paired with a mentor. We call them a battle buddy that would walk their journey with them for 6 months to help them get their get past some of the demons that they're dealing with, and then build a healthy lifestyle so that they can carry the torch themselves.
So what is your theory on why exercise helps with PTSD?
There's a bunch of research out there and very technical and high level speak where I'm probably not the best person to bring it up. But I boil it down to there's a couple of things that happens. You build self-worth as you are working out. You're accomplishing goals, whether that's run a little bit faster, lift a little bit heavier, drop an inch on your waist size, right? So you're building some confidence there. I also believe big in the community style exercise. So Orange Theory, CrossFit, Camp Gladiator, F45, these organizations that bring you into a class, and then you and I are working together or working beside each other, but we have an opportunity to socialize and really just be a part of a community. I think that that's a big piece of it. You know, from a chemical standpoint, and this is where, you know, I don't have a PhD, so I may butcher some of this stuff, but the releasing of endorphins and other hormones because of working out has a direct correlation to your mental health and helping kind of ease some of those pains. Some
of your members talked about testosterone treatments. Is that something that's part of the, maybe not your program per se, but just programs in general? And I'll explain our situation in a second.
Yeah. So yes, it's coming up. It's not part of our program. I know that Optimal Bio and I have had some conversations of where it could fit in and be nested in very nicely. but the conversation is happening, and people are starting to recognize that there is this thing with TRT or bioidentical capabilities that can help them in their pursuit to recovery, right? I'm very interested in finding a way to make it a part of our program for the veterans that need it.
Yeah, we were back in our Southern Pines location. We treat a lot of military, Army in this case, and one of the patients does a lot of work with PTSD as well. He's, I think, a former colonel that retired, and one of his life's missions work is to help other soldiers that are suffering as he suffered as well. And one of his theories was, making sure that before you can treat somebody from a mental standpoint, an emotional standpoint, you really have to make sure that their body is balanced, from a physiology standpoint. And one of the primary things, especially in this day and age and with most of us actually, just due to phthalates, due to Roundup, due to PVC piping and whatever, that our hormones are out of balance, which is then creating anxiety, lack of energy, other physical and emotional ailments as well. So he was obviously an advocate of the treatment where they can then balance the body, and then they can then work on some of the other emotional pieces of trying to help people get better. And to your point earlier, obviously if your levels are better, then you're going to have better workouts. You're going to probably feel more inclined to, want to do more when you're working out and what have you, and not be as discouraged. So anyhow, that's I wanted to share that with you. I'm not sure if, in your community, you've talked about that at all.
And we have, and you're 100% right. Like, to have a steady state of testosterone and it be at the optimal level makes a huge difference in how fast someone can recover, right? And meet those goals. But I also, I know that I have TRT treatments currently, and if I miss it, I feel terrible for the next couple of days. It affects me mentally, right? And so, this is not scientific. This is completely subjective. But if I miss my dosage, all of a sudden, the next 2 or 3 days, I'm just in the gutter emotionally. So there is something there, but I'm not scientific enough to know exactly why that's the case.
Nor am I. Obviously, if you talk to Dr. Brandon, he could probably give a better explanation to that. The only thing I could say is that, if less testosterone, cortisol gets produced more, estrogen's off, so at the end of the day, your body, is not exactly, running in an optimal, way. And, I don't want to get into we obviously do the BHRT, bioequivalent hormone replacement therapy, and the pellet, and not the shots or anything else. But that's not why we're here today. But I just wanted to, ask that question just to see, what you're seeing out there as well. So working out, being part of a community, all those good things. What are some of the other things that, help, with recovery with PTSD?
Yeah, so I think the linchpin of our program is our battle buddy system. And in 2013, when I got out, I took a job just outside of New Orleans. And yes, there's other veterans that are in that area, but they weren't part of my community. And I quickly realized that I had no one that I could really talk to and kind of vent, because I sounded crazy if I was talking about my times in deployment. People just looked at me like they felt for me, but they didn't know how to empathize. And so what our Battle Buddy program does is give you someone that's walked a mile in your shoes, probably has dealt with their own demons, has appreciation for how exercise and nutrition can help you, and they empathize. So it gives them, the veterans, the ability to talk to someone that understands them very well. And so that to me is the linchpin of the program. I think that is a big part of helping individuals recover from PTSD, not therapy, right? Therapy has its place, but I find that that's a one-way street. With a battle buddy, it becomes a true relationship. And that, in my opinion, is one of the greatest things we can do to help these veterans, is give them someone that they can build a relationship with, that understands them.
Why don't you speak to the nutrition piece as well? What are you all doing there?
Yeah, so I've partnered with an amazing individual. He's significantly smarter than I am. He has a PhD, I think, in 2 different things. But here in Charleston, as a part of Iron Bridge CrossFit, they have a nutrition program as well. And so Donnie is a certified nutrition coach. And what he will do is every 2 weeks, he meets with these veterans and they talk about healthy eatings. They talk about macros. They talk about eating for your goals. We provide the veterans a InBody once a month as well. So we'll find a location that has InBody so we can get a understanding of their progress. And Donnie is just amazing about getting to the root cause of what's going on in their life, and then building a nutrition plan around that's going to help them progress. And it's interesting. We've got some veterans that are, perfectly matched with the macros, and they're doing, meal preps and everything's, as you would think someone that is really on a serious diet would be doing, right? We have others that they're in their journey. We're just asking them to not eat the donut today. And it's interesting, and again, this is very scientific stuff that, I can't speak to technically, but the chemicals and some of the sugars and the processed foods and donuts and cookies, if we just remove that out of the way, we are increasing their ability to cope significantly, right? We have one individual. All we have done is remove them from drinking Coke. And in the last 4 months, and I'm making a correlation that may not be there, but they have improved significantly in their PTSD symptoms. They are significantly better. And from a nutrition standpoint, we just removed one of the worst things in their diets, and it's made a huge difference.
So is sugar the primary issue with a lot of the nutritional pieces of treatment?
Yeah, sugar is a huge part of what we're doing with the nutrition focus of our program, right? Is trying to cut those out. That along with some of the processed foods. We're not a paleo focused organization, but there is some merit to the point that if it doesn't naturally decompose, or it doesn't do it in a reasonable amount of time, like if I left something out on the counter for 2 or 3 days, if it doesn't start to spoil in some fashion, it's probably not something you want to put in your body, right? And so that's one of the topics that our nutrition team is pushing. Now, again, it really depends on where that veteran is and with their journey. It may be a victory is taking one specific thing out of their diet. Or it may be as much as, really cleaning up their eating habits so that they're eating extremely optimal across all meals. And so that's a big part of it. The other part is making sure that they are, it's counterintuitive because you think if you skip meals, you'll lose weight because you're getting less calories, but you also prevent yourself from performing at the level that you need when you're working out. Or it encourages binging, right? So, yes, sugar is a huge part of where we're focusing, but we're looking at all around the healthy eating habits associated with someone that wants optimal health.
Got it. So speak to the time in the military, because my son was in the Army after you. He was in from 14 to 21. And I was stunned how unnutritious the military is, and it's almost like they're stuck back in the 1940s or 1950s to some extent. And I'm thinking to myself, especially these high level infantry units, they got to perform at maximum peak performance, right? And when they're out in the field, obviously they're eating MREs, which I'm sure are nutritious to some extent, but are loaded with chemicals and everything else. And then when they're back on base, especially the infantry, the enlisted, so to speak, I mean, it's Mountain Dew, it's Coke, it's, candy, it's popcorn, it's everything you could possibly, name. And I'm just wondering, I mean, from your experience, was there any, you're obviously an officer, was there any discussions around that at that point in time, or was it more about just going out and trying to win a battle?
Yeah, I mean, yes, there was discussions. Obviously, we wanted a way, and I remember this very distinctly when I was deployed in 2006 to Ramadi. So we lived in the city, so we would get these things called log packs. So the logistical trains would bring in hot chow once a day to wherever our patrol base was, and we moved around the city. And I remember talking to some of the other officers, and it's like, how do we balance this? How do we get, the nutrition food, but also the comfort foods? Because, these guys, they don't have anything. And at the time, we didn't have internet. We had a sat phone that we were allowed to call once a month home, right? So food ended up being that comfort item that we were able to give them. Now, is that the right way to do it? Arguably, yes. Arguably, no. But I also feel like there was not many individuals that were well-rounded enough in that kind of conversations, understanding nutrition. It wasn't until a couple of years ago that I started realizing that Gatorades were bad for you, right? And I pounded Gatorades all the time because that's what athletes drink. And so there's so many misperceptions, and I, we would hope that some of the senior officers would do due diligence digging into that, but that probably takes a back seat, right? I do know, depending on, so I was a part of the Marine Corps Martial Arts Center of Excellence. So that's our martial arts, very similar to the Army's combatants. And in 2011, I believe, I became the operations officer, and that was a huge part of what we were trying to do as an organization, is bring to light some of the nutritional principles that would help infantry units and special forces units perform even better. Now, some of that was taken in and people bought into it. Sometimes it fell on deaf ears, but it's hard, and I'm glad you asked this. It's hard because the operational cycle is, at least back in 2006-07, was that you deploy, then you had, a little bit of R&R time, or rest and recovery, and then you're back into training to deploy, just to deploy again. And when we prioritize things, what is going to help the most? Is it healthy eating habits, or is it teaching them how to efficiently and effectively shoot, move, and communicate on the battlefield? Arguably, it's both, right? Because one leads into the other, and the other leads into the other. But I don't think someone that is 25 years old that happens to be an officer is thinking along those lines.
Yeah. Yeah, it's just it's like with anything in our country at this point in time. The populations would just be simply becoming sicker and sicker. And back in, I think, 1997, I think 14% of the 18 and under crowd, was on some type of medication. Now it's close to 50%. So and obviously, if you're a young adult and you're sick, then you're probably not going to be better when you become an adult, right? So. And I think we focus sometimes on the wrong things. So it's kind of refreshing to hear that, through what you're trying to do with your organization, where you're focusing on nutrition as well, in addition to other things. Hopefully as you educate your guys, and then hopefully they educate, their kids and so on and so forth, that we can start turning this wheel around a little bit.
Absolutely. And, as you're talking, it made me think of a quote. And I'm going to butcher this quote a little bit. And I can't give credit to who said it because I don't remember. But I've heard this several times. You either focus on your health now while you're young, or you are forced to focus on your health when you're old. And the gravity is, and I'm a product of this. I have a 9-to-5 outside of WarriorWOD. And so I sit at my desk, I get super focused on running my sales team, and I go all day without moving, eating probably not the best food, drinking tons of coffee, right? I could focus on my health today and less on, trying to be completely efficient and prioritizing myself and my family. Or I'm going to be forced when I'm 60, 70, 80 years old to try to fix things that, a lifetime of bad decisions have caused me to have, and you're right. I mean, even obesity rates, the rates of heart attacks, COPD, all of these things are increasing. And it's increasing exponentially on the veteran side as well. When you look at just obesity rates, the veteran population, and this is counterintuitive as well, veteran populations are more obese than civilian counterparts.
Really?
Oh, yeah. And I think it ties back into what you were asking me about eating habits while we were in the military. When I was in the military, I would pound 2 MREs a day. They have like 2,500 calories each. So, I would patrol all day long. I was completely active nonstop, and I would eat, this large quantity of calories. Well, fast forward to when I got out in 2014, I didn't change my eating habits. I was still eating at the same amount, but I was sitting at a desk, or I was talking to a customer. I wasn't patrolling. I wasn't carrying 70 pounds of gear on my back. I wasn't running every single day. So that is a part of it as well. And across all the major diseases and health issues, veterans lead statistically most of, like COPD, cancer, skin cancer, specifically heart attacks, cardiovascular disease. All of these areas, veterans are more likely to have it statistically. And so that's part of what we're trying to do as well. That's a byproduct, right? If we can, when we get them in their 30s, 40s, and 50s and work with them through our program, we can start diverting some of those statistics.
Right. I would think too, just, with your entry requirements to get into the military these days because of the obesity issue, I mean, you must be pretty selective, or in order to meet your quota, so to speak, you might have to be less selective, in the hopes that in boot camp you'll be able to, to shapeshift, some of these recruits. I mean, is that true?
Yeah, I mean, the reality is while you're in the military, you're held to a standard. We called it body composition program in the Marine Corps. I'm sure the Army has terms, and every branch has their own terms. But as a male, I couldn't be over 18% body fat. Now, when you kind of put that in perspective, almost a fifth of your body's fat. So there is some latitude, right? Most people, when they're junior or they're coming into the military, that's not the issue. Yes, there are the ones that have to cut a bunch of weight to, meet the standard, but there are standards associated. Where we're seeing the biggest fluctuation is senior people in the military. They've been there for a while, and shame on them for not leading by example. But then more so once they get out, kind of my journey was that I kept eating the same way I did when I was in the military. And there was a time period, 2014-15, that I was kind of fluffy. And that was because I wasn't paying attention to my eating habits and, changing based off of my current situation. I was still eating like I was 25 years old and patrolling 10, 12 hours a day in Iraq, So I think that's where the problem is.
Yeah, and I would think too, if you don't have a very good image of your body, if you're overweight and you're in civilian life, but you are suffering from PTSD, that's obviously not going to help, in the recovery as well.
Yeah, that self-worth is a big thing. Like being able to feel good in your own skin may not remove the PTSD, but it's a step in the right direction.
So talk to me about your personal workout regime. What does that look like?
So up until recently, I was an avid CrossFitter, and I got a little burnt out on that, and I just transitioned to more of a traditional body building / lifting weights and running. and I don't know if Aaron knows this or not. Him and I communicate quite a bit, but about a month ago, I tore my pec. So right now it's solely running and then doing dumbbell and body weight, lower body exercises, because I don't know if you've torn your pec before or not, but it limits everything. You can't go overhead, you can't press, you can't put a barbell on your back to do squats. Everything is affected by that. So my current workout is essentially I run every day, and then I will do dumbbell lower body stuff because I have the range of motion to do that. At some point, I want to get back into CrossFit. I personally really enjoy that modality because it mixes both aerobic, anaerobic, and then it's high intensity, so you can do it pretty quickly. But I like the gymnastics aspects of it. I don't know why, but that's been something that I've always gravitated to. And that's something that I don't get with more of the traditional bodybuilding slash free weights kind of workouts.
Yeah, just for those listening, Aaron is one of our managers at Optimal Bio. The tearing a pec is not good. I mean, you see that every once in a while in the NFL or in college football, and these guys are out for 4 to 6 months. It's just the only thing that heals it is rest. And so the fact that you're able to do a little bit of a workaround is good. But I would think running every single day cannot be fun after a while either. So how do you keep that fun and interesting?
Yeah, so I live in Charleston, South Carolina, and if you've ever been here, it's beautiful, right? And I personally believe it's the most beautiful place in the world. Now, I'm biased. I grew up here. But to be able to run on the banks of a river or, be on the marsh, changing that environment every single day, that helps me. But I also mix it up. Some days I just run 2 miles, super slow just to get it out there. Other days I challenge myself and it's like, all right, how fast can I run this 2 miles? I will also put on a weighted vest. So I have a plate carrier, very similar to what we had in the military, that has weighted plates inside of it, right? And so I'll run with that to mix it up. I may not run the full 2 miles, but it's changing that dynamic. It's changing kind of the stimulation associated with it. I've tried I do the same run every single day, and then I fall off the wagon. What I've learned works for me is every single day it has to be slightly different.
Yeah, I think that's where a lot of people that, come into Optimal Bio, they get the hormone treatment, and then they think that's going to just fix them. And, there's obviously it's a 2-tier, 3-tier component, right? It's nutrition and it's also, exercise as well. And, if you haven't exercised before, a lot of people start out, going 60 miles an hour as opposed to 0 or 1 mile an hour. And we've in past podcasts have talked about, if you've never done it before, just go take a walk around the block, maybe do 1 push-up, and then, slowly, get to 2, to get to 3, to get to 4, and so on and so forth. But I do think also the second piece of it is if you're doing the same exact thing every single day, just like you would in anything in life, if you ate the same exact food, if you read the same exact book, if you watch the same exact show over and over and over and over again, you're going to get bored after a while. So, but I think you get into this exercise routine where, man, I got to do bench press today. I got to go run my 2 miles. I'm going to run the same exact route every single day. It's going to get boring after a while. So when you're working with some of your members, do you find that they kind of fall into some ruts as well? And if so, do you give them tips and techniques to do things differently?
Yeah, absolutely. Yes to both questions. And we have some veterans and their whole objective in life is go walk around the block once or twice a week, right? And others, they're a part of a gym. We pay for their gym membership. We're finding and this is why I gravitate towards more of the community style workout gyms or the gyms, right? CrossFit, Orange Theory, the like. Those that we send to 24-hour fitness or Crunch Fitness or Gold's Gym, some of them get super burnt out because, as you were saying, they do the same thing over and over and over again. Now, to help with that, that's why we have this Battle Buddy program. Because that's part of their conversation is, hey man, what are you doing? And it's just an unbiased way of someone saying, cool, glad that you've gotten into this regime of doing Monday, Wednesday, Fridays, the same thing. Let's spice it up a little bit. Let's, instead of doing this, why don't you try this in the gym? And that's helped out a lot. Having that mentorship, it is, again, I said it earlier, is the linchpin of our whole program. And it goes back to kind of what you're saying is, that's how we prevent the burnout of the same routine over and over again. Is someone's actually invested in your journey and, helping you with that.
And do you have a hard time finding these battle buddies, these mentors?
Initially, when we were kind of an unknown commodity, no. Or yes, absolutely. And then all of a sudden, we had one person that was our battle buddy, and he started talking to a couple buddies, and then now I have more battle buddies than I have veterans. It's interesting. But here's, part of our program is, at the end of the 6 months, there's really 3 different avenues a veteran can go. And I'll go from, worst case to best case. Worst case is we get into 6 months, it didn't help them. And so we have to recalibrate our program. We'll not turn them away. They get brought back into the program, and we recalibrate our approach to get them to where they need to be. Now, all along, we've been doing recalibrations as we need to. But at the end of the 6 months, they're like, I'm still suffering and I still have a tremendous amount of work to go. We'll bring them back in. So that's kind of the worst case. The next one is that they get to the end of the 6 months. They're like, hey, I can carry this journey on my own. I've changed a lot of my lifestyle choices and how I work out for the better. And, I can do this by myself, but I'm not really invested in doing anything more of WarriorWOD. The last one, and I think this answers your question, and what I would say about 90% of our veterans do is they get to the end of the 6 months. They're like, hey, that was incredible. I got a new outlook. Yes, I still have symptoms, but I have a coping mechanism through exercise and nutrition. I'm on the road to recovery and I can take the torch myself. However, I want to pay it forward. And now I want to take those that are going to follow in my footsteps through their journey and help them get to where I'm at. And so that's why we don't have a hard time getting battle buddies. Got
it. Everything sounds great. Unfortunately, you probably run into some folks every once in a while that just simply can't cope, can't progress within your program. What happens to them? Do you recommend them to go someplace else? Like, how does that work?
Yeah, so absolutely we do. If we're not situated, and I'm not going to give any names or identifying information on this one veteran, but I have a veteran in my program that has a issue that's beyond my scope. I cannot, through my staff or through my professional knowledge, get her to where she needs to be. So what we are doing, I've partnered with another nonprofit down in Costa Rica Recovery, that we can send veterans down there for 30, 60, 90 days. All paid for, flight, everything's paid for. And it's a recovery place that it just has capability beyond my means. So that's what's going to work for this individual. Now, that's not a perfect solution for everyone. But when a veteran comes to us and presents problems outside of our scope, we owe it to them to be an advocate and help them find their way. Now, I have another veteran that's dealing with a foreclosure on their house. I don't give out money to help with that, right? But what I have done is partnered that individual with another nonprofit that can help them with financial assistance. One of the things that I've been, I can't tell you yet if lucky or unlucky, but here in Charleston, we have the Low Country Veterans Engagement Team. And so the governor has brought in a secretary of the VA that has established these regions in South Carolina. And each region becomes a coalition of nonprofits that make sure veterans don't fall through the cracks. And I was recently nominated as the co-chair. So again, I don't know yet if that voluntold has been a blessing or a curse, but what I love about it is it's given me the capability to reach out to other nonprofits when your question comes up that, hey, how do I help someone outside of my scope? I have a tremendous network of other nonprofits that can help out.
So how are you funded?
Up until recently, out of my savings. So we finally made a transition where people are donating quite a bit to us. We also have started writing grants. I've always written grants since we've started. I'm just terrible at it, quite frankly. So I professionalized our staff a little bit, and I brought an amazing individual. Her name's Courtney Greenwood to this to the staff, and she has been helping me with grants. And since she's come, we're really making some true traction, right? But in the last 2 months, we've had a weird dynamic happen, and Optimal Bio was kind of part of this. They've reached out to us and say, hey, we want to get involved in some fashion. We believe in what you're doing. We don't know what that looks like, but we want to get involved. So every single day I'm having these conversations, and whether it's financially or time, people are contributing to us. But they're also talking about us, which is leading more people to financially support us. We also had the Institute of Clinical Excellence reach out to us recently. And this organization, I can't sing their praises enough. They have offered, unsolicited, offered that they will do a matching campaign for us. So up to $10,000, every dollar that we raise in the month of September, they're going to match it. So we have the opportunity to raise $10,000. They'll give us $10,000. That's $20,000 to help our veterans. And 100% of it will go to our programs.
That's fantastic. I mean, if you broke it down by numbers, how much does it cost, to help a member out?
On average, it's about $1,500. Now, the constant is the nutrition coaching. I know what that costs, but there is a different price for the different modalities, different gyms, whether it's a mom and pop in, Boise, Idaho, or it's a CrossFit gym in New York, those are going to be varying different costs, right? So on average, it's about $1,500. What's interesting is this is another dynamic that's happened recently. I'll call a gym and say, hey, this is what we're going to do. I'm going to pay up front 6 months of this veterans gym membership. And they, most of the time, have started coming to us and say, listen, we love what you're doing. We're going to get a paying member out of this in 6 months. We're going to invest in your program, and we're going to either heavily discount it, or what's happened more and more recently is people have said, don't even pay us. And so we've got that dynamic happening as well. So when you're asking about funding, we've been blessed recently with the generosity of the community around us to help us move forward. Now, 6 months ago, I was paying all of this out of my pocket, and we weren't getting the concessions. I think people were realizing that we have a little social proof behind us, that they're starting to see some of our results. And when I talk to these gym owners or the sponsors like Aaron and the Optimal Bio team, they inherently realize that what we're doing is the right track, right? Exercise and nutrition as the prescription instead of antidepressants and once a month therapy as the prescription. When you peel that back, it's very intuitive that that's the right way to go. I was on a conversation earlier this week, and the individual asked me, he's like, why do you enjoy what you do? And it's like, I absolutely love it. Like, it's super impactful. However, I wish that I didn't have to do it. I wish that there wasn't a reason for us. I wish that the VA had this as part of their program, or as military members were transitioning out, they were getting the help that they need, or when they're dealing with it as a active duty or reservist in the military, the organization that they're a part of would help them, right? I wish that there was no reason for WarriorWOD, but there is. And so because of that, I do enjoy what I do because of the impact we're making. But it'd be nice if we didn't have to do it.
Well, I do think too, for it seems the majority of the Americans have great respect for veterans and, certainly want to help and because they recognize the sacrifice that they've made for the country. And so from a fundraising perspective, I think you probably would be somewhat successful compared to some of these other fundraising things that I've done in my past. But what I guess ultimately, if you, look at the future and, you're, 5 years down the road, I mean, where do you see WarriorWOD? What do you want it to be eventually?
So I want it to be a well-recognized program that is helping veterans recover from their mental health issues, right? Kind of universally. There's, and it depends on what report you read. Some reports say 18, some say 22, but there are way too many veterans committing suicide every single day, right? And so whether it's 18 or 22 or 1, that's still a tragedy, right? There is an additional 30 veterans that are losing their lives to substance abuse a day. So when you do that math, it's between 48 and 52 veterans that are no longer with us. And if you peel it back slightly, what's the cause of that? It's because they couldn't cope with their invisible wounds. Either A, they wanted to numb it with drugs and alcohol to the point where they overdosed and lost their life, or they wanted a quick exit because they couldn't deal with their invisible wounds. Where I see WarriorWOD in 5 years is making a very positive impact on those statistics, getting ahead of it. There are some amazing organizations, Mission 22, to Valhalla Project. Like, they're absolutely amazing. They focus on the suicide part. They focus on the kind of the end. What I want to do is get ahead of it and focus it on before it becomes that tragedy. Why we have plenty of time to get them on a different course. And so if we could deal with veterans while they're looking to recover and getting ahead of them getting into that rut where they think they need to take their lives, will have a huge impact. And that's where I want to be in 5 years. To answer it a little farther, when we started this, my wife, who is an amazing and very patient individual.
Aren't they all?
Very patient. Oh, yeah, absolutely. Not only is she that, but she's also dealing with a 6-month-old as well. So, yeah, she's super busy. But when I first started talking about starting this, she goes, do you want to take on yet another thing? We were just getting married. I was starting a new job. We just moved to Charleston. There was so much in our lives. And, we came to the consensus together that if we saved one veteran's life, one, and a lifetime of work, isn't it worth all of it? And I say all of that because that's where I want to be in 5 years. I want to be able to come back and say, hey, Jim, listen, you know how we talked about saving one veteran's life? We were able to do that. Not only were we able to save one, but we've saved X number because we had that positive influence.
Yeah, it's your mission. It's a calling, actually. More so than a mission. And I do think that you probably could speak to this as well. I don't want to go into too deep of a discussion on it right now, but it seems that even in active military, I mean, suicide's a big issue. And I remember my son telling me that they would, they get the stats every single month. But then when COVID hit, everything got focused to mandating vaccines as opposed to taking care of the mental health issues within the military. So I think you're kind of starting from, 30 yards back, at the start line, because there's been nothing really being done in active. And then when they get out, now you have, it's almost, you got more work to do, I guess, than you otherwise maybe would have.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And we're also dealing with another dynamic with recently younger veterans that recently left the military. So when I was in, and this is just a product of just happened to be born when I was, right? It's not that deployed multiple times. I saw a lot of combat. Why did I join the Marine Corps? Well, because in my mind, that's what I would be doing, right? At some point, going to see combat. That's why most people join the military. But there's a dynamic that's happening right now. And I've got a lot of friends that joined in 2016, 17, 18, never deployed. And they were in infantry units or artillery units or tank units and never saw combat. And now they're getting out. And there's I wouldn't say survivor guilt, but there's a bit of, I didn't serve like I should have. And that eats at them as well. So when we talk about PTS and invisible wounds, it doesn't mean that someone had to see combat. There's many elements, and you're 100% right. In the last 2 years, the focus has shifted so drastically away from taking care of people's mental health to focusing on COVID. But when everyone went to their homes and was in isolation, didn't that spike mental health issues? So it's like, we're trying to fix this, so this falls off. But because this falls off, we've got to now go over here and try to fix this. Like it's this cyclic thing that we just can't get ahead of.
Yeah, it's I think with the military pulling back, the U.S. government in general just getting out of all these spots and in effect becoming more isolationist. I mean, there's probably going to be less active duty, and there's only so much training you can do. It kind of goes back to working out before. If you're just doing the same thing over and over again, you're gonna have to remain fresh in some way, shape, or form. Listen, it's been great speaking with you today. Learned a lot. Very proud of everything that you've done. As always, with our podcast guests, we ask them to give our audience, 5 takeaways, life experiences you've had, people you've met, anything you want to pass along, either as a form of advice or, what not to do. The microphone again is yours.
Wow. Loaded question. So I'll try to do this off the cuff real fast. So one of the biggest suggestions that I have, and this is a common conversation, veterans will come, or I will talk to veterans that are interested in the program. They're like, listen, I'm not that bad off. Give it to someone else. I'm not worthy to have your program. And I turn the conversation around, and I hope all the listeners kind of take this, whether you're a veteran or you're not a veteran, first responders, complete civilian, whatever it is. If you're dealing with something and you feel like, yeah, I'm dealing with it, there's others that are more deserving. I would say that that's probably a wrong way to look at it. Look at it this way. You're closer to being part of the solution. So let's get you to where you need to be, so then you could pay it forward and help the person that really needs it, right? And so I hear that all the time. It's not a competition of who has it worse. If you're struggling, go get help. And it's that simple. And then when you get to a point that you're good, pay it forward. Help the next person. And then collectively as a community, we could have a huge impact. And I think that kind of ties into my second piece of advice. If you're struggling, reach out to someone. One suicide is too many, and it doesn't matter, what demographic or, your past life, whether a veteran or not. It's a network of people that suffer. And I look at it in my life, right? If I were to take my life, my wife, my 6-month-old daughter, my grandfather, my father, my mother, all of my friends they're the ones that is going to suffer. And as much as we want to take care of them, we also want to take care of the person that's suffering internally. And so if you are suffering, reach out. Even if you're not a veteran and you need help, reach out to me. I will gladly pick up my phone any time of the day or night and let you vent and hear you out and be a part of your solution.
Great stuff. So how does one get a hold of you?
Yeah, so our website is WarriorWOD.org. There's several different contact methods through there. I think my direct email address is there, but I'll give it out on the podcast. It's phil@WarriorWOD.org. Someone needs to talk to me or wants to support us or needs to be a part of our program, please, by all means, blow up my inbox. I would love nothing more to have these conversations and help people out. Social media, all of our social media platforms is the WarriorWOD. So if you go to Instagram, TikTok, or anything else, you can find us there.
Excellent. And that's WOD for WOD.
Yes.
Hey, listen, it's been great talking to you today. Appreciate all your time. You've been a great guest, and I wish you nothing but the best of luck.
I appreciate it, Jim. Thank you.
This has been a production of Optimal Bio. Optimal Bio is CEO Tyler Brannon, podcast host and partner Jim Baker, medical director Greg Brannon, production assistance by Core Media, Beth Grabencourt, administrator, Kevin Duthu, executive producer. The podcast can be found on our website, optimalbio.com, on Apple Podcasts and Spotify. Our theme song is Sunwave by Paradiso, provided by Epidemic Sound.